I want to welcome you all to our district conference. I'm Joan Goff, the district director, and this is going to be a great conference. Are you having fun yet? Yeah. Good. Debra Bagley and I met last year for I believe it was the first, I don't know, maybe it was the second one. Syracuse, I think it was Syracuse. No, I don't know. Columbia, who knows? She and I were on the same judging team, so you can see that being a judge and getting to know people by judging at a national show, you can form a relationship that's continuing. And isn't that the best about all of our Rose friends? So Debra and I were both judging, and I'll never forget because she said, "Oh, you see that? That's a center that's not, it's all the way down." We were doing minis. She said, "Not pointed up, it's like a pool. I don't like that." And I go, "Well, but that's the best one in this group." Remember, we had a little discussion about that? But anyway, after that, that's right. That was it, no form, no blue. So Debra and I this year were roommates together when we went back to Harrisburg in June, I believe it was. And in the meantime, Jolene had said, "Hey, Joan, we ought to get Debra out to California to be a speaker." So that's how Debra is here, and she and I have been friends now for a year and a half. She's been good friends with Jolene for a number of years. She has her bio in the program, but she has lived in Plano 22 years? 29 years. 29 years. She would love to come to California. Unfortunately, her daughter lives in Texas. She's in Plano, and her husband won't move unless her daughter does. So, and the daughter works for oil and gas. She grows about 400 roses, or used to. Used to.
We'll talk about that.
She is a person that has to deal with Rosette disease. Bad. It's not here in California yet, but it's bad in Texas. And she has all kinds of temperature fluctuations that we do not experience here, mostly hot. But she can also have hail. So this is her wonderful talk, Longhorns and Roses. Debra Bagley.
An hour and a half, no, I'm going to have to tone it down. I have one of those voices that carries well. And I will tell you right now, I missed my calling. But because, and some people say, you should have been an opera singer, Deb. Well, later in my presentation, I'm actually going to sing for you, and you are going to get to judge whether I missed my calling or not. So yes, I am close to Waco. I'm an hour and a half north of Waco. Why do you know Waco? Fixer-upper, okay. Greetings from the great state of Texas. Howdy, y'all. I'm happy to see you. By the way, we always call ourselves the great state of Texas. I have no idea why we call ourselves the great state of Texas, but if you hear somebody from Texas, they're going to say, "Howdy from the great state of Texas." So, howdy from the great state of Texas. But I am going to put my confessions up front, because I do have confessions. I'm sure you all do too. Joan alluded to one of them. I would rather live in California than in Texas any day of the week. So I will talk in glowing terms of Texas, but keep in mind that I'd rather live here than there. So, all right, so I have prepared a presentation for you. I even have a script. I will tell you that. That I will tell you, I may not even stick to the script. We may turn around, look at my slides, and say, well, what does that have to do with what she's talking about? That's my second confession that I make for you today. So bear with me on this, and we'll be fine. All right, Longhorn and Roses. So I didn't pick this title, by the way. Alcina picked this title. I had some other long-winded title that was the title of one of Texas's favorite sons, Willie Nelson, and Alcina said, "That ain't gonna work, Deb." I was like, okay, well then what do you want to call it? She says, Longhorns and Roses. I said, all right, we could do that. So here's my Longhorns, here's my yellow rose of Texas. The other thing you see in this little photograph here are bluebonnets, which is, of course, the Texas state flower. So my story begins in 1964, and a lot of wonderful things happened in 1964. The British invasion happened. The Beatles came to America. They were on the Ed Sullivan Show. 73 million people watched that particular show. My favorite was Paul. What was yours? Same. George, all right, George. No John people here in the audience? Come on, usually John shows up as well. Okay, well. Ringo, okay. You see, later on, he did that wonderful television show for the kids, the one with Henry and, what was it called? Thomas the Tank Engine. That's what it was, Thomas the Tank Engine. I loved him in that. Okay, the Civil Rights Act was signed, officially ending segregation, and that was Johnson who also signed, did the War on Poverty at the time. I don't know that either have been resolved since 1964. We lost that one. Yeah, we lost that one, didn't we? Also, the Surgeon General announced that smoking may be hazardous to your health. Okay, so we've come a little since then. Hello, Dolly opened on Broadway. God, that was a magnificent show. Cassius Clay, a very young, brash Cassius Clay, beat the heavyweight contender, Sonny Liston. Of course, Cassius Clay went on to become Muhammad Ali, the self-proclaimed the greatest of all time, and many people would agree with that. Let's see, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor married for the very first time, and not the last time. And the first Mustang rolled off the Ford assembly line. I had a 1964 and a half, as they were called, in my garage for many years that my husband restored. It was beautiful. It broke my heart when he sold it. And in 1964, the World's Fair opened in Flushing Meadows, New York. And of course, that's the other confession I have to make to you all. I am not a Texan. I have lived in Texas for 29 years, but I am a native New Yorker. And I will tell you, my two children were born in Texas, and by Texas standards, they are not Texans. To be a Texan, Marianne will verify this, to be a Texan, you must be second generation. So my kids are faux Texans, is what I call them.
So, did you trade one accent for another?
Actually, I never had a New York accent. My teachers were Bostonians, so I could park the car with the best of them out there. My dad, though, however, who got me involved in growing roses, was from Hell's Kitchen, New York. You ever hear of Hell's Kitchen? Yeah, over on 8th Avenue. It was a nasty place. Cold water walk-up flat he grew up in. Well, after the war, under the GI Bill, he got an education, moved out to Long Island, New York, and he wanted to grow one of everything, having come from that environment in Hell's Kitchen. So that's how I actually got involved in growing roses. Cool. And the U.S. Congress, all right, the U.S. Congress, I don't know why they had any right to do this, but they did. The U.S. Congress recognized bourbon whiskey as a distinctive product of the United States. Okay. So Disney's Mary Poppins had its world premiere in L.A. My Fair Lady, starring Audrey Hepburn and the fabulous Rex Harrison, premiered in New York City. And Bewitched, starring Elizabeth Montgomery and Davin McGavin, thank you, premiered on ABC. It was one of my favorite shows as a child. And that's also when I started growing roses. So here I am in 1964. Is that not quite a picture? So I am the oldest of 7 children, six daughters and 1 son, if you can imagine growing up in a house. And we had Irish twins in our family. Do you all know what Irish twins are?
Yes.
Okay, tell.
You're born within less than a year of each other.
That is correct. So it's the first time someone has answered that question correctly. So an Irish twin is 2 children in the same family that are born in the same calendar year. There are several Irish twins in my family. So it was a very close-knit group. As a matter of fact, of these 6 girls, me being the oldest, we all wore the same size and looked about the same as well. It was a real problem in high school because somebody would prepare their clothing for the next day and the other person would be wearing it. I remember once here's where I deviate. All right, I remember once my sister caught me in the hallway. She says, "I ironed that blouse." She had me dead to rights. I said, "Yes, you did." She made me switch right there in the hallway. I learned my lesson. And because I was the oldest of these 7 children, my mom had a great burden with all these young children all the time. I do not know how she did it, to tell you the truth. I think the woman was a saint. and is a saint today. She is still alive, 85 years old. Do not cross her. She can be meaner than a snake. In any case, as soon as Mom could pass a kid to Dad to take care of, she did. And so she passed me to Dad, and since Dad was trying to grow one of everything, I became his gardening partner. So a little rose by the name of Tropicana. You all remember that rose? Okay, it was the first orange rose. It caught my dad's eye. It obviously caught the whole eye of the gardening public because it went on to make $1 million for its patent holder. Dad and I went down to the nursery to get one of those. And we planted it on the side of the stoop. And then Dad says, well, that looks unbalanced. So we had to go back to the nursery and we bought another rose, Peace. So you all remember Peace. So we had a Peace and a Tropicana on the side of the stoop. Now when I said stoop, I saw no recognition in people's eyes. So there's a stoop. You see that thing that's right there in front of the front door? It's got about 3 steps. It's made out of cement. There I am, by the way, holding the family dog. This is like 20 years, not 20 years later, maybe 12 years later. That's the stoop. We love it. We covet it in New York, in the South. In Texas, we have porches. Everybody sits on the porches. In New York, we all sit on the stoop. There's one of my many sisters sitting on the stoop, and you can see there's actually somebody right next to her because there's a knee there. What you could also see in those photos that there was no roses there anymore because Dad quickly put me in charge of pruning those roses. Now, I had no more right to prune those roses and be handed a pair of pruning shears than a pig has the right to wear a cocktail dress. Because my idea of pruning roses was to get all my friends, get on the stoop, and jump over the roses. If you made it over, you were good. If you didn't make it over, the roses were pruned. So, those roses were gone, to tell you the truth. So fast forward about 25 years, and here I am, living just north of Dallas in Plano, Texas. And that's right about up there. Look at that. There's the border between Oklahoma and Texas. It's kind of squiggly there, right? Why is that so squiggly? Well, it's because it's the Red River there. And there's the border between Louisiana, Mexico, and then New Mexico. So that's where we border. So I found myself living in Texas. I had no idea and why I got there other than my husband took a transfer. And at the time we were not married. We were engaged. My husband called me up at work. He said, honey, we're moving to Texas. I immediately hung up. Never said a word. That was it. He called me back. He said, honey, did you hear me? We're moving to Texas. Click. Called me a third time. I'm not sure I would have had this perseverance to call me a third time. Called me again. I got your message, honey. I'll see you tonight. I will stop at your house. Click. My husband came by and he said to me, my then fiance, said to me, you know, I understand you don't want to leave, your family's here, and believe me, New Yorkers do not believe there is life on the other side of the Hudson River. I do not know what is our problem, but we do not believe in that. So in any case, we made a deal. I said, okay. He proposed the deal and I accepted. The deal was we would still get married, we would move to Texas, and within 6 months, if we didn't like it, we would return to New York. There were plenty of jobs. Well, notice I told you I'm living in Texas 29 years. What do you think happened? You know what happened. I'll tell you what happened. My husband said, I don't know what you're doing, honey. I'm staying. And I'm glad we did because Texas is a very nice place to raise children and grow children. So, and truthfully, the Money Magazine has named Plano, Texas, the 3rd best place to live in the United States, if you can believe that. First place was, I can't remember. It was somewhere in North Carolina and somewhere in Idaho. So Idaho, right. Idaho's a beautiful state too. I like that one as well. But I'm still picking California if I had my druthers. So in any case, I find myself living in Dallas, Texas on and there's the Dallas skyline. Isn't that pretty? I mean, we really pride ourselves on the neon buildings and the lights that we put up, and that's the Trinity River. I did not take that photo. One of my friends did. But it is gorgeous, and it's a lovely city, lots to offer, lots of culture. And I find myself living on the old Chisholm Trail. You all know the Chisholm Trail, right? Well, the Chisholm parts.
Longhorns.
Yeah, Longhorns. That's where the Longhorns come from. I actually live on the old Chisholm Trail. It's kind of funny. I didn't realize it for the first couple of years why everything around me was called Chisholm. I was like, why? What's with the Chisholm here? And somebody said to me, you're on the Chisholm Trail, you fool. So I am on the Chisholm Trail. And the Chisholm Trail was used in the post-Civil, I'm going to read this to you, the post-Civil War era to drive cattle over land from the ranches in Texas to the railheads in Texas. It was mapped out by Jesse Chisholm from his southern outpost, and I really can't see this far anymore, from the Red River border up here to Kansas. So he mapped it out, and that's why it became the Chisholm Trail. And what it did for us is we no longer have Longhorns going across land anywhere. You won't see them, but we do celebrate it with monthly chili cook-offs, cattle drives, and a few other things. But it further cemented, and we keep it in our mind as we have statues all over the place of steers. I mean, good heavens. If some people have statues of famous people, we have steers. So we still celebrate our cowboy history, which was truly cemented by these drives. But today, Plano is nothing but a suburban environment. There are 300,000 people in Plano. Yeah, it's pretty well known. We have lots of corporate headquarters in Plano. It's a very, very, very nice place to live, a highly educated workforce, and a young people's town. Well, this is as close as we get to Longhorns today. All right, this is an ad in the airport because we don't have any Longhorns in Plano anymore. Everything has been built up and in houses. We still like them, but we sure don't know. So moving to Texas, as I said, came as a huge surprise for me, and I learned a lot about Texas when I got there. For example, did you know that Texas is the second most populous state in the United States after your great state, California? Did you know it is second in land area after Alaska? Did you know that its treaty entry allows Texas to break up into 5 individual states? So when we entered the United States in 1845, our entry treaty said we could break up into 5 individual states without congressional approval. And we vote on this kind of every now and then. Last time we voted on this was in 1991, and because Texans like things big, we're still one state. Also, we are the #1 producer of crude and cattle. Now, Joan mentioned my daughter works in oil and gas. All right, so this is, I'll mention this just because it's ridiculous what happens in oil and gas. It's kind of boom years and bust years, and right now they're kind of looking a little bust years. I don't know, maybe I can fix this a little better. Trying to help you, John. Goatee. How's that? Yeah, goatee.
You don't want to get it too close to your mouth because then it'll, you're.
Oh, you can hear me good, okay.
Yeah.
It's John's recording. I know my voice carries real well, and you're going to get that opportunity to hear it in just a second.
Yeah, if you get it too close, then consonants.
Kind of, I don't need that.
You don't want consonants.
Don't do that, okay. Is that better for those way in the back? Okay, very good. All right, I don't know where I was. Okay, crude and cattle. Crude is certainly a big industry in Dallas, as is finance and banking. My daughter started working in crude right after she got out of college. Now, I probably shouldn't tell this story on you, but I will anyway, because crude is an amazing business in Texas. My daughter left college at 22 years old with 2 degrees, one in computer engineering, the other in geology. She went to work for oil and gas, 100 grand. Right out of college. Can you imagine that? How many of us would have liked to have walked into that? I know my daughter says to me, no 22-year-old mom has the right to make 100 grand. I looked at her, I said, you truly are stupid. Take the money and run, baby. Which she did. By the way, if you work oil and gas, you don't pay for benefits either. How many of you pay for benefits? I mean, good heavens, mine are $1,000 a month, you know? I've yet to get to the greatest insurance plan of all, Medicare. I can't wait, because that $1,000 a month will melt away, and I'll use that money to travel with. Anyway, #1 producer of oil and gas. Let's see, we have the largest state capitol building. I don't know why we did that, but we did. We have the highest speed limit, posted speed limit in the United States.
Does that help limit the population growth?
Actually, we build toll roads. I can't believe it. We build toll roads. We farm them out to other people, and our highest speed limit is on a toll road that costs you $10 to drive between Austin and San Antonio. And there's a lot of traffic in Austin. That's our state capital. So the speed limit there is 85 miles an hour, which of course we do at 95 because we speed everywhere. I regularly get pulled over. Last time I got pulled over, I said, so how high can I go without you visiting with me here? They never give you a ticket. They just pull you over and warn you, thank God, because I would be quite papered at this point. In any case, I said to the officer, they're all really nice too. I said to him, so how fast exactly can you go before we have a nice chat and visit with each other? He says about 8 miles over the speed limit. So normal speed limit in our area is 70. So I could do 78 without visiting with local police. In fact, the police have a very interesting way of pulling you over. As you come down the road, they do this. And that is, I didn't know what that was the first time I saw it. I waved back. I thought, these people are real friendly here. And one of my friends corrected me immediately. That policeman did not follow me. They're real nice, I will tell you that. So we have the highest speed limit in the United States. And we have the Tyler Municipal Rose Garden, which is the largest rose garden in the United States as well. It has 38,000 bushes, 500 varieties. Any of you go to the National in Tyler a couple of years ago? Yes. Yeah, it was beautiful, wasn't it? I mean, it's a really nice garden. They also have a very wonderful rose parade. They call it the Rose Festival. The young ladies get dressed up in themed costumes. There is one seamstress in the town that makes every costume for every young lady. Yes, and she does it as themes. It's absolutely magnificent. I would highly encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to attend. And if you are going to attend, you need to contact me so I can go with you.
What time of year is it?
October, it'll be next weekend, I believe. So the roses are in bloom. The young girls look fabulous. And then they have little ones that they dress up as fairies, and they sit on mushrooms, big ornate mushrooms in the garden. It's just the cutest thing. Tea with the queens. I mean, it's just adorable. And the Great State Fair of Texas started yesterday. And there's our mascot, Big Tex. He wears size 69 custom-made Lucchese boots and size 67 Stetson hat. And he's decked out in Dickie clothing, which of course is all this is made in Texas. And he says, no surprise, howdy and welcome to the great state of Texas, all right? So I'm telling you, we have, and when you go to the fair, you can see such things as the 2-ton butter sculpture, if you wish. It's a do not miss, I will tell you that. And you can eat such fabulous foods as fried bubble gum. I can't imagine why you'd want to eat fried bubble gum, but we've had it. Fried butter. I don't get that one either. And then this year's winner of the most creative food for the state fair is fried Jell-O. Now I know y'all would die for some fried Jell-O. I will be going to the state fair. It opened yesterday. I will be going to the state fair this week. I will be certainly searching out the fried Jell-O. This that I happened to eat a couple of years ago is a red velvet funnel cake with funnel cake beer, and that is actually powdered sugar on the rim. And it tastes just the way it sounds. All right, so, I know it sounds terrible. Sugar and beer, it was terrible. I will agree with you. In fact, I think I took one sip and said, I'm done with this. All right, so there's 3 things I want to do with you today. One, I want to share some Texas culture, which I've already done some. I want to talk about some of the challenges we face in growing roses in Texas, and also what happens when it all goes right. So basically what that means is I'm going to tell you stories, I am going to sing to you today, and I'm going to show you pictures of pretty roses. Sound like a deal? Yeah. All right, so let's start with some Texas lore. So you all know about the yellow rose of Texas, right? Everybody says the yellow rose of Texas. Yeah, okay. So is it that, Harrison's yellow, which supposedly went overland in the covered wagons as the settlers went west? Well, I'm going to give you a hint. Here's where I sing to you. All right, this is one of our favorite songs. There's a yellow rose in Texas I am going to see. No other soldier knows her, no soldier, only me. She cried so when I left her, it like to broke my heart. And if I ever find her, we never more will part. She's the sweetest flower this soldier, you can sing along if you want, this soldier ever knew. Her eyes are bright as diamonds, they sparkle like the dew. You may talk about your dearest May and sing of Rosalie, but the yellow rose of Texas beats the bells of Tennessee. Now, this is the Mitch Miller version, 1953, I want you to know. There are other versions of this song that I find politically incorrect, so we do not sing those versions of this song. So as you well know, this is about a young lady by the name of Emily Morgan, or Emily West. She was a free woman of mixed race who was in around the Houston area about the time of the War of Texas Independence. She was known as a mixed race, high yellow woman. She was a woman of great beauty and charm. Sam Houston, the founder of the Texas Revolution and Texas Independence against the Mexicans, sent Emily, it's told Emily volunteered, I am not certain because there are no records that exist of this other than the story, sent Emily to the camp of Santa Anna. Santa Anna had already decimated the Texicans, and they called themselves the Texicans at that time, at the Alamo. I know you're all familiar with the Alamo, and then with Goliad as well. And Goliad was a complete massacre of the Texicans. So Sam Houston sent Miss Emily there in order, he knew she would catch the eye of that vain peacock, I guess I would say, womanizing Santa Anna. And truly, she did. The Texicans were certainly outnumbered in both resources and men, like 2 to 1 on this one. But the Texicans attacked nonetheless. Now, our kids get 2 years of Texas history in school. The Texans are very, very proud of their past. There are many fine things about Texans. They are honest, they keep their word, and they love their history. So the kids get 2 years of history. They get 1 in 3rd grade and 1 in the 5th grade. It is inappropriate to tell the story of Emily Morgan, and yet she's such an important figure in Texas history. We tell it this way. Miss Emily was serving and entertaining Santa Anna in his tent by serving some tea. And when his generals came to him and said the Texicans were attacking, he said, I don't want to be bothered. I'm liking this tea here. And thus, the Texicans won the battle. The truth of the matter is, Santa Anna was caught without his pants in a rice paddy. And yes, he did ignore his generals who came to say that they were being attacked. And the Texans routed the Mexicans at the Battle of San Jacinto in 1836, pardon me.
And Santa Anna was captured.
He was captured in that rice paddy without his pants, by the way. And that assured the independence of the Texas nation. So you can see why I cannot tell that. We tell the story as a tea party. And she became the unlikely heroine of the War of Texas Independence. And we still sing of her today. So as we talk about independence, 6 flags have flown over the state of Texas. I don't know why we're proud of that, but we are. And in order, it's Spain, France, Mexico, the Republic of Texas. We had our own country for 9 years before we joined the United States. So we joined the United States, and then the Texans fought on the side of the Confederate War for economic reasons, except for my little county. My little county, believe it or not, called Collin County, succeeded from the Union as a Union supporter. Now, figure that out. This little bitty, it's probably about 50 miles in total. It succeeded from the whole darn thing. It became its own country, Collin County. Now, I don't get that. But anyway, that's what we did. This is also when I moved to Texas, I learned about the War of Northern Aggression. One of my kids came home and said, we're working on the War of Northern Aggression. I said, really? Canada? Canada attacked us? When does this happen? Am I not here? And my son looked at me, he says, no, this happened like in the 1860s. I said, there was a War of Northern Aggression in the 1860s? Yeah, it's a Civil War. Little did I know. Okay. So let's talk about some of the, say I told you I'd sing to you, I told you I'd tell you stories. I've done that part already. Let's talk about Texas soil because it is very unique. Texas, this is our soil. It's kind of, it's not real pretty. It has many different types of soil in Texas, but this one happens to be mine. And it's something called vertisol, or we commonly call it black gumbo. And vertisol, black gumbo, that's what we call it, is a soil which is very high content in clay, in expansive clay that forms deep cracks in drier seasons and in alternating years, so it shrinks and expands. And when it does that, it causes self-mulching. And for those of you who do not remember this, I didn't remember it either, the A surface and the B subshell, we really have no B horizon because it's all a horizon because of that self-mulching thing. And we call it black gumbo because it is stickier than sticky than sticky. I can grow 2 inches if the soil is moist in my yard. And that's no other way I can do this is in walking through this soil. So as we look at it, here it is in dry conditions. Now this is up against somebody's house, and that is a pen there. Can you imagine what this does to our homes? We do not have basements. Do you all have basements? No. Okay. Well, I still covet my basement from New York. I'd really like to have that thing back again, but we don't have them in Texas because we're all built on slabs because of this particular soil. It's a great amount of pressure on our soil, and we do everything we can to maintain our foundations. It is very costly to have them repaired. I've had mine repaired twice. All right, so the shrinking and swelling can damage buildings, roads, and extensive subsidence in our area. Our roads in the summer, because of this shrinking and expanding, and it's mostly the shrinking, they actually collapse. So do our water mains, etc. So vertisols are generally used for grazing of sheep and cattle, and yes, they do get hurt in this when they step in some of these cracks. It is a loss to the... We also have soil movement. Now, it's not that we don't know how to put telephone poles up. We surely do. They started straight. But look at them today. They're all leaning over like drunken sailors. And if you go down any of our roads, you'll see this, that they're moving like drunken sailors. So we've got soil creep going on as well. So when I first came to Texas, it was May 10th as a matter of fact. I'll not forget the day, May 10th, 1989. I decided, having lived in an apartment in New York for a little while, working in Manhattan, that it'd be nice to have a garden again. So I took my spade, which I had had out there in Long Island. It was just a square thing, and I had nice sandy, loamy soil in Long Island, and my flip-flops. I used to call them thongs until my daughter said to me, "Mom," and you know that's code for stupid, right? "Mom, you never wore a thong. You wear flip-flops." I was like, "Oh, okay, I got it." Got it completely. So out in my flip-flops with this nice square head shovel, I'm thinking I can move a lot of dirt and I can put some of this stuff I put in. And I jumped on my shovel, just like both feet, held up my shovel, jumped on it, and broke 4 toes. So that was my first welcome to Texas on that. All right, let's talk a little bit about water. How am I doing on timing here? Am I okay? Water. This is our only lake in Texas. This is it. Looks like a swamp, doesn't it? Yeah. It's called Caddo Lake. It straddles the border of Louisiana and Texas on the east side of Texas. We don't even have our own lake, for heaven's sakes. We share it with Louisiana. Everything else that we have in Texas as a lake is man-made. Those are our reservoirs. And like you all, we are really having a problem with water. We've had water rationing for the last 8 years. These are our current restrictions. Notice that we use our, and I don't know if you do this, but we use our addresses. For example, my address is 1704 is my house number. I am allowed, and believe me, this is tattooed on my heart, I'm allowed to water on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that's it. That's all I can water. Now, that is really not so bad because I must tell you, I put down as much water as I can on those Tuesdays and Thursdays because I can't water on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I just water like crazy on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And my neighbors next to me, they will water on Mondays and Wednesdays. So on the other side of the street. So it's kind of funny. One side of the street's wet one day and the other side of the street's wet the other day, and then it's dry in between. So there's 2 things that I don't like about this. Actually, I hate about this. One is we have now defined normal watering conditions as 2 days a week and 2 scheduled days a week. We will never have watering at will again, ever. We're done with that. It's over. It's finished. I don't like that. If it rains on Tuesday and Thursday, you can't water. And even if it rains just a little bit, you can't water. So then you're down to once a week. The other thing I don't like about it is the water district encourages you to snitch on your neighbors. I don't like that at all. I do not care for the snitching part. So this is at best. So this is what is defined as normal watering conditions today, and this is at best. At worst, which we have had, it is once a week, period. Doesn't matter what's going on, it's once a week. So we also have the other condition of where we have too much water. So I don't know how well you can see this chart, but I can assure you the ones in red we got a whole lot of water. Last weekend I got 5 3/4 inches of rain in 24 hours. We can get rain that comes down at a rate of 2 inches per hour. We have flash flooding. My pool regularly overflows. I try and grow irises as well. Last year we had so much rain. You see the red in 2015? My irises rotted in the ground, which is kind of unusual for a place that's so gosh darn dry. But the rain came down so much. So this is the creek in my little backyard. It's normally 2 to 4 inches, but it can be 12 inches. 12 feet. It just takes everything with it. So water is a real problem for us. The other thing that's a problem is the price of water. Our water has doubled in the last 5 years. We pay $2.56 per 1,000 gallons. And in the next 5 years, it's projected to double again. So we will be over $5 for that. I don't know how you meter your water out here, but think about how many 1,000 gallons of water you use. I use it too to water my roses. It's getting quite expensive to water. And you might say, hey, why don't you use drip irrigation? That's a very reasonable assumption to make, right? Until you consider our soil. Since our soil is that expansive clay, you really don't want to have islands of moisture out there. You're trying to keep it evenly moist all the time so that the soil's not moving. So drip irrigation, lovely as it is, doesn't work really well in our vertisol. In fact, if you were to come to Dallas in the winter, you'd take me aside and say, hey, Deb, everything okay with you? And I'd be saying, yeah, what's the problem? You're watering your dead grass. I'm like, yeah, I am. We all water our dead grass. We're trying to keep that soil moist so that we don't damage our foundations. So we water year round. Another problem for us, of course, is high winds and twisters, tornadoes. We do have them in our area. Fortunately for me, and here's our wind speeds for each month, and I put the max in there, and you can see the wind's always blowing at some time or another. Now, I have personally experienced one tornado in my 29 years in Texas. That does not mean that there's not tornadoes around me. There have been some very devastating ones around me. But I personally experienced one. So my son's about 13 years old. We're standing in front of this huge plate glass window. The 100-year-old elm tree in the backyard's going like this. And my son and I are looking at it. All of a sudden, the wind, the air around us turns mustard yellow, brown, and green. Well, both my son and I knew exactly what that meant. And we turned and we looked at each other, and my son said to me, pardon me, my son said, oh shit. Honestly, I didn't know whether to react to that or to the fact that we were about to be hit with a tornado, to tell you the truth. Fortunately, somehow my mother act disappeared and survival stuck in, and I pushed my son on the ground, got on top of him. Well, we lost most of our roof, our chimney, 2 trees in the backyard, and we were deposited a tree that was not ours, and none of our neighbors recognized it in our pool. So, and that was a baby twister. It was just a little baby one that just kind of skipped through our yard and went on. So we were very, very fortunate that time. I did take care of the other issues with my son afterwards, after we're sure everything was okay. All right, so straight line winds. Did y'all get straight line winds? Well, I heard some winds here yesterday. I'm up on the 15th floor, and it sounded like I was in a blizzard with the winds going on here yesterday. But we can have winds in excess of 90 miles an hour. They just come out of nowhere. All of a sudden, we have these straight line winds. And we have lost fences, trees, etc. Here's one of my trees. And notice, where is that tree? Of course it is. Right in the middle of my rose garden. That's exactly where that tree is. You'll notice another one leaning down the back. Somehow the fence stayed this. No, I think the fence was gone on the other side, as I recall. So these are straight line winds. Now, hail is always a concern for Texans as well. We have wild, wild weather. Last year in March, we had a hailstorm that lasted 10 minutes. And it had baseball-size hail. It was huge. So one of my friends afterwards told me, she says, you know, it came through my roof with the decking on it. It came through my ceiling and landed inside my house. I did not know where to stand to not be injured. She said it was very, very frightening. Another friend runs this tortoise conservatory of Madagascar tortoises in Texas, of all places, in his yard. And he ran out to save his tortoises, because again, this came out of nowhere. He said he grabbed one of those Rubbermaid totes, put it over his head, ran out to grab the tortoises. He said, I had no shoes on, I had only a pair of shorts, I had no shirt on. I ran outside to do this. And he said, and I woke up in the hospital. He broke his clavicle and his arm with this hail. I had $58,000 of damage to my house and my cars. Yeah, we lost the roof, we lost windows, we lost the fence, we had damage to a car that was at the dealership, believe it or not, sitting outside. I know, high damage at the dealership. Who'd think of that? Anyway, we did. Our windows were broken, and even the brick on the side of our house. If you live in Plano, by the way, your house has to be 75% brick. We have a lot of restrictions. They seem to think we'll take care of brick better than anything else. Don't ask me why. Anyway, we had damage to the brick and the cedar siding on the house. It was a lot of damage to get that done. So not only did it do that, there's my house. You could see the gutters hanging off the house. You see that? The paint actually comes off the gutters when they get overloaded with hail. I didn't know that. There's my rose garden. Do you know that just a day earlier it was gorgeous? I mean, absolutely gorgeous. I was waiting for the best roses I have ever seen in a long time. And now, it kind of came at a bad time for me because I had rotator cuff surgery this year. Any of you ever have rotator cuff surgery? Yes. Yeah, okay. So then you know how wonderful that surgery is, and you really can't do anything afterwards. So my garden had to stay like this afterwards because I had rotator cuff surgery 2 weeks prior. So this is my garden. Look at that potted rose. You know, it's like flattened. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, it was an awful lot of damage to do in a very short period of time, and my garden is still recovering from it. Roses are still dying from the amount of hail damage that I had, and I'm replacing them. All right, it's also very hot in Texas. We can expect, in fact, I know you all think, all right, hot, what's hot? All right, so we can expect 20 to 50 100-degree plus days a year. And in Texas, when it is 100 at 10 o'clock in the morning, it's 100 at 10 o'clock at night, and maybe it's 95 at 2 a.m. It just does not cool off. It stays hot all the time. In fact, there is our high temperatures. In fact, when I moved into my house, it was 116 degrees. I was like, what was I thinking about moving in September? I thought it was going to be a little bit cooler. All right, so my favorite gardening outfit is, believe it or not, my swimsuit. And my favorite accessory is my swimming pool. What's that?
And your thoughts. And your thoughts.
And my thoughts, yes. And my thongs, yes. My flip-flops. Yeah, I do wear those, as a matter of fact, which is kind of scary since, I don't know, do y'all have fire ants here? No. Oh, good heavens. All the more reason to come here. What do you know? Fire ants. I don't know if you've heard of them. Fire ants are a nasty kind of species of ants. Come up from Texas. Another gift from Texas. In any case, you step on the mound. They come boiling out up your legs. And if you were to look at my feet, you would see some bites from them. They hurt like the devil when they bite you, and you get quite a few bites. So wearing flip-flops, thongs out in the garden with fire ants is always a challenge. But yes, I do. But that is my favorite gardening outfit. So we have an expression in Texas for people who have worked really hard and kind of lathered up. We call it, it's my favorite by the way, rode hard and put up wet. And I feel that way most days when I'm working. All right, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this part because I know you know all this, but we seem to have every single rose disease in the world out there. We have black spot, anthracnose, canker, downy mildew, botrytis, crown gall, even mildew. You would think with our hot weather, but because of the way our rains happen, we sometimes get mildew as well. The only one we do not have, yeah, it's coming. The only one we do not have is rust. And I know you all have rust here. And you have my sympathies because I worked with rust when I was in New York. It was not a lot of fun. And it was wicked this year? Oh, I'm so sorry, because I know rust is a real issue. But we do not have that one. But the one that we currently have that's really bothering us, oh, cool weather equals good roses. That is a bouquet I picked in my yard. The one that's currently bothering us is Rosette. I know you do not have rose rosette, and I'm going to say a word after that, yet. I would expect that at some point you will have rose rosette. And rose rosette is caused by a wind-blown mite. It's an aerified mite, Frictus tucopus. That's probably a very poor pronunciation of that, which is just blown. It bites an infected rose and then blows to the next rose and infects that. There is no cure for rose rosette. The only cure that we have is to dig the rose up. I am turning 10 to 20% of my garden a year with rose rosette. I just dug up 5 roses last weekend. When I say I dug it up, I'm still recovering from rotator cuff surgery. I did not get the shovel out there. My husband broke his arm. He did not get the shovel out there either. We had, one of our neighbors actually came over and dug them up for us. But the ones that are affected, of course, are the oldest and biggest roses that we have, because they're like big windscreens out there grabbing these mites. And we have such a reservoir of this disease in North Texas. It is a hot spot in the United States. It looks like this. That's my yard. You can see there's one right there. That's Grand Amour, which I no longer have. It's a beautiful rose. I no longer have it because it got rose rosette. In any case, the big ones get it. We dig them out. We cut them back. It is not in the soil. So we can dig a rose out and we can plant a rose almost immediately. But what it's done to our gardens is the big, beautiful roses that we have are now reduced to little things that are new. And I know of whole gardens gone. The Collin County Rose Society put in a public garden of 1,200 roses in 1996. By 2000, they were all gone. There was not a single one left. Gardens around my neighborhood, it is very expensive. No kidding. It's costing me a lot of money to keep replacing these roses. It breaks my heart since some of them are so old and so beautiful at this point. And here it is in front of our library. So we have done this huge educational effort around rose rosette, and it's kind of had some, you're all good, kind of had some unwanted consequences, to say the least. We have run some seminars that are very well attended, like several hundred attended the last one. I think 1,000 attended the first one. We're trying to educate landscapers, nurserymen, etc., about rose rosette, and we're doing a good job. But the outcome of this has had some unintended consequences. The unintended consequences of this is the roses are still in the landscape. I don't understand it. We're telling them to take them out because until we can get rid of the reservoir, we can't get rid of rose rosette. We've been saying let's save the roses. So they're still there. All right, you can see them everywhere. I gave a presentation on rose rosette earlier this year, and I made that statement. My husband always listens to me as I go through my slides and kind of develop my presentation. He says, honey, he's a real stickler for detail. Honey, you can't make that statement until you're sure. Okay. Then let's walk 6 houses this way, 6 houses that way, and across the street. Well, any house that had roses in my neighborhood had rose rosette. And of course, I kind of knocked on my neighbor's door. Yes, dear?
Do you actually use these door hangers? This is brilliant.
Yes, we actually use these door hangers. So that was my question. Do we actually use these door hangers? And we do use these door hangers. They're expensive to print. We hang them on people's doors. We hang them on roses. We knock on people's doors, tell them we have rose rosette, and they think we're crazy. They do not remove the rose. And initially it was thought that rose rosette, it would be 3 years and the rose would die. Well, it turns out they live a lot longer than that as a reservoir. So we're really fighting this there. And the rose...
In the reservoir,
The reservoir, the infection reservoir is what I'm calling the plant, because once it's infected, you can't cure it. There is no way to cure it at this particular moment in time, and those mites just blow all the time, and they just keep blowing. Yeah, it's a breeding ground for rose rosette, exactly. And these roses are literally everywhere. So my husband said to me, well, you can't go by 12 houses. I said, well, how about I drive a mile east and a mile west on on our main drag here in Plano. And so I drove a mile one way, and we looked at all the roses, and he wrote them all down. And we went the other way. He says, you have no chance, dear. I don't know why you're even trying to grow roses anymore. Because it is literally everywhere. So it is a huge problem for us. And an unintended consequence for us doing all this education is people have stopped growing roses. Yeah. All right? So people in our area have stopped growing roses. And what do you think that's done to the membership of our rose societies? That's right. It is plummeted tremendously. So, you know, what we meant to be a very good effort has somewhat become self-defeating. The roses are still there, and the membership in our society is going, and people still growing roses. Yes, sir. The comment is, some of the rose sales have dropped from 5 million to 2 million. I believe that because in our nurseries, you don't see many roses anymore. You see very, very few roses. In fact, one of the nurseries on the main drag had a rose right out in front of their nursery with Rose Rosette in it. So I got out of the car, went in and said, hey, you got a rose out there, and Rose Rosette, they said to me, oh, we're too busy to dig that thing up, we know. So that's kind of the way that goes. So, and the misery still still goes on, because this is not over, and it is not going to go away anytime soon for us. There are many of my friends who have just simply stopped growing roses. They are just through with it. Okay. So the other thing I want to tell you about is, for me, challenges for me, is wildlife. These are some bobcats. This is my front yard. You see Mama with her kits. They live in her kittens. They live in my backyard. As do coyotes. I have coyotes all the time. In fact, one coyote tried to take my little dog. And I'm out there with nothing but a pruning shear. What am I going to do? The coyote's going to take the dog. What do I do? Ah! The coyote looked at me, looked at the dog again, looked back at me, said it wasn't worth it, and jumped back over the fence and left. So I managed to save my dog that time. My husband came out and said, what's wrong, dear? Ah! You having a fit? Something? Yeah, well, yeah, you see that beautiful tail that just went over the fence? It wanted to have a snack. So we also have water moccasins, cottonmouths, in our yard too. Do you know that they chase you? They do. They chase you. And I do not run as fast as I used to run. The one that chased me this spring, you know, they kind of, I don't know how to say how a snake rears up, but it kind of raised itself a foot off the ground and showed at me its big white mouth and then started coming my direction. And I said, oh my God. And I ran like the dickens. So they're in your yard and you really can't see them because they hide pretty well. This one was about 5 feet.
Oh my.
They're not small. I mean, they come in all sizes, but this one was about 5 feet. And I was working in my garden and it just slithered out that way between my legs, and then I made a mistake. I had a pot in my hand, and I threw it at the snake to encourage it to keep on going, and that's when it turned around. I was like, oh God, this is one of those cottonmouths that defends itself. I'm out of here, baby, I'm out of here. So you just have to be really careful. And we also have nutria and rats and raccoons, and we have almost every kind of wildlife you could think about. We don't have deer, though. And I'm grateful for that because, yeah, all you people who talk about deer all the time, I say, at least I don't have that one to deal with. We also have armadillos. And armadillos will tear your backyard up in a heartbeat. You all got armadillos? No. Oh, well, they'll tear your yard up in a heartbeat overnight. They'll do it for you. And they carry leprosy, too. And they travel our roads quite well. In fact, they kind of get scared when they come in front of the car and they jump up and then you really hit them. All right, so those are some of the challenges. Now there are lots of good things that happen too. I was asked to talk about weather and challenges. I think I've covered that topic pretty thoroughly. So I didn't tell you about insects, and Baldo will tell you about that later. But we got those too. We got spider mites that laugh at us and cucumber beetles that fly in and say, western flower thrips, I mean, golly, we got tons of those. They're like a cloud that just come over in your yard and take over. And cucumber beetles, the unripe ladybugs, and aphids, we have those too. I mean, we've got all our fair share of the same kind of bugs that you do. And I don't do anything about them. I just say, Have at it, boys, girls, except for spider mites. That's the only thing I do anything about, because I'm really concerned about honeybees and butterflies, so I don't spray any insecticides anymore. But I do use a water wand, and I use it with my favorite gardening outfit, my swimsuit. So I feel fully justified in doing that. All right, so good things is I live very close to the gardens of the city of Farmers Branch, and they're absolutely gorgeous, and they have a lot of test gardens out there. They have the AOE gardens, the Award of Excellence gardens. I got to judge Gail Trimble's rose out there, and it did marvelous in the heat of Texas. It was beautiful. We all agreed it was the best thing we'd ever seen in the AOE trials. We also have the American Garden Rose Selection Program, the AGRS, and then there's the ADRS. I can't even remember what that stands for. And many of the national growers also send their roses there as tests. David Austin is currently doing a test out there, and I evaluate the David Austin roses as well. In fact, here are two from the test. This photo was taken when it was 109 degrees. Anything blooming at 109 degrees with the moniker David Austin, that's pretty darn good, don't you think? If you were close, you would be able to see the very fried blooms up here, but that's blooming. And look at this one. You like that pinky red color? I mean, golly, it was 109 degrees, and these were new bushes, and they had blooms on them, so I was pretty impressed by the whole thing. All right, so this is my garden. Pre-hailstorm. Remember I showed you the same picture a little while ago, so this is actually last year. Doesn't it look beautiful? I mean, it breaks my heart when I think about what happened to it this year. This is the east side of my garden, part of the west side.
Do you have a lot of shrub and old roses?
I have every kind of rose you can imagine out there. I call this my garden of indecision, because I cannot decide which ones are the ones I really want to grow. So I just grow them all because I like them all. Here's some of my favorites. Remember I promised you pretty rose pictures, so I got pretty rose pictures. This one grow good here too? Yeah. Oh yeah, one of my favorites. Nancy Jean, this one was taken at the show. I entered that. Doesn't that look nice? Spring's A Comin, one of Whitwell's roses. This is one of the roses I took out last weekend that my neighbor helped me with. It had rose rosette, I'm afraid. Just disappeared. Hot Tamale. A favorite, yeah. You know, it is a favorite. Bee's Knees, you know, another favorite. So some people say to me, when I first started coming out to California to look at roses, I was aghast. I was literally stunned to silence. And that is a very rare condition for me, I must say. I could not believe the roses that I saw. In fact, I stood in front of one bed of roses, and Bob Martin came up to me because I was standing there like this. Bob Martin came up to me and says, "You know what that rose is?" He says, "What is it?" I said, "That's ketchup and mustard." Do you know how it looks in Texas?
Teeny.
It's a mini. I mean, it's that small. Our roses will never be as big and as colorful as yours. We just have to accept that. And we're very jealous. I tell people in Texas, you know, when I come out here and I look at the roses in the gas station, they look better than the roses in our yard. Anyway, Bee's Knees, Odessa. Look at how tall that is. I mean, that's a miniature. It just I think I must have a sport. It must be a mini climber. Regina Lee, another one of Witt's roses. Shameless, also Witt's roses. Have you all met Whit Wells? He is quite a character, isn't he? I love that man. I talked to him once to ask him. I did an interview with him. I asked him, how'd you get to grow all these roses? And he said to me, well, he's sort of like my dad. He says, I wanted to grow. He built his own greenhouse out in the backyard, had a meat business, packing business for a while, and he decided he'd build his own greenhouse, and he wanted to start one of everything from seed. So he decided to grow a rose from seed, and he got a really nice looking rose, his first rose, so he kept growing more. And Whit probably, I know others say there are other fathers of the mini flora rose category, but Whit really brought that along. And so I said, where did you get all these mini floras to suddenly introduce them when the category was recognized by the American Rose Society? He said, well, I have a circular bed out in front of the drive in my house. And all the ones that didn't fit miniature or any of the other categories that we had, hybrid tea, because he has a few hybrid teas and also some floribundas, I planted out there. So as soon as they recognized that category, I had a whole bunch of roses to put in there. Miss Flippens and Lady Bren, it's Sport, is beautiful, isn't it? First Choice, another one of Witt's roses. That is a gorgeous rose. Magic Show, Frank's rose, grows very well for us. Veterans Honor. I just removed this rose. Can you imagine that? This rose has been there 15 years. I removed it last weekend. It just killed me. And there is my favorite gardening accessory right behind it, my swimming pool. St. Patrick. Oh, I love that rose too. It's just absolutely gorgeous and loves the heat of Texas. It's one of the few things that'll bloom during the months of July and August and September, when our roses are basically dormant.
So that's the real rose of Texas, yellow rose of Texas.
It's a good yellow rose, but if you say that in Texas, you might get your head handed to you, because we know it's Miss Emily Morgan. Is that not right, Marianne? Moonstone, another one of my favorites. Let Freedom Ring, one of Tom Caruth's rose, another native son of Texas. Who prefers to live in California? Louise Estes, my favorite rose of all time. It's such a gorgeous rose. Grand Amour, which I told you I already lost. I lost that one in the fall. I no longer grow that rose. Pope John Paul II. Now, we usually don't like white roses because of the thrips and the thrip damage that happens. But this one continually grows good. Red Intuition, florist rose, and a striped rose. It's always very floriferous with lots of blooms. Cabana, another striped rose. That's a J&P rose. It is not a show rose, as you can see. It's purely a decorative rose. And among the floribundas, I love Playboy. And how can you have Playboy without having Playgirl? Joan showed me a rose she hybridized yesterday using Playgirl and Gemini. It was gorgeous. She makes me think I'm going to go back and use Playgirl myself. Iceberg grows very well. In fact, there's Iceberg in my neighbor's yard, who no longer grows any roses. Lost this rose and all of his other roses to Rosette. He gave up. Cinco de Mayo, which recognizes Texas independence, 5th of May. And I love the smoky colors on Cinco de Mayo when it's cooler. And as I'm out photographing, we have lots of these little anoles in our yard. The kids try and catch them like mad. And they're kind of cute. And they have this little red pouch under there. And they're really pretty. Austin roses. Heritage grows very well. Scepter Isle is another one. So, if you're in a hot area, these are some of the roses that'll do good for you too. Gertrude Jekyll, oh, this is a little bit washed out, normally a much darker pink. Yeah, very fragrant. Love that rose. The Prince, another fragrant, beautiful rose. William Shakespeare 2000, another good one. Jude the Obscure, and here is a bouquet that I cut last fall. And there it is in my yard. I still have that rose, and it's a big one. I mean, it's surprising. It's one of the few big roses I have left over. Abraham Darby, and there it is in my yard. That bush is gone. Another casualty. Yes, ma'am.
Do you prune those roses?
Absolutely, I prune roses.
And they grow that high?
Yes, they do. And I always tell people to prune Austin roses very carefully, because you can prune something that has a cane this long and prune it back 3 feet, and then you got a cane this long going that way. So, you just have to be a little cautious when you prune those Austin roses, because they grow very differently in Texas than they do some other places. The majority of them are climbers in our Texas climate. Then we have some shrub roses. This is Ivor's rose, which again I no longer have. Lost it due to Rosette, but it's in bloom all the time. It's really a pretty rose. And it's big. I mean, if you have a big space you want to fill, this is a good rose for that. Deanna Krause, she's a lovely, lovely, lovely lady from Houston, Texas. that this rose is named for, and it's a beautiful shrub rose, grows very well. And the hybridizer is a native Texan as well, Ray Pontoon, and he named it for the lovely Deanna Krause. Among climbing roses, I love Purple Splash. I kind of whipped through your photography section last night, which was incredibly impressive, let me tell you, and saw some Purple Splash growing here as well. Lighter rose, which of course, I love that rose. I mean, golly, it looks like a big snowball in the spring, doesn't it?
Beautiful.
And among the old garden roses, Mutabilis, which will get to be 15 feet wide in Texas and about 10 feet tall. Old Blush, another one that'll eat your house. And there again is my friend's house. No longer has any roses because Rosette got them all. Underneath that you see Tamara. My Old Blush disappeared too for the same reason. Archduke Charles. I love the multi-colored variations of the rose on the bush. Marchesa Bocella. I just love saying the name. You know, when I got married, okay, another aside, when I got married, I married a guy named Ross Raymond. All right, now my name is Debra Bagley. You may wonder why that is, because I decided not to go to the end of the alphabet when I changed my, to change my name and stayed Debra Bagley to my husband's constant irritation. However, when he got his birth certificate to get his passport, I found out I had really married a man by the name of Rosario Michelino Giovanni Raimondo. So I told my husband, don't you tell me about changing names. Doesn't that almost sound musical? Anyway, I love it because it sounds like music, just like Marchesa Bocella. I love that rose. And Pearl d'Or, I mean, that's a magnificent rose in my yard. Just love it. Madame, I don't know if I spelled that right, Madame Isaac Perrier. I mean, that thing has octopus arms that go 10 feet long. Really only blooms in the spring. You get a small bloom in the summer. Those raspberry colored blooms that smell magnificent. Love that rose. Marie Daly, which I did grow, is now gone because of Rosette. There it is in the bush. It smells just like Pond's cold cream. Who remembers Pond's cold cream? Yeah. Well, you know what? Ladies used to use that a lot back in the 60s as their skincare cream. My mom did. So the only thing there was her eyes. You could see her eyes and you could see her mouth. And every night when she'd go to kiss me goodnight, I was doing this. Anything not to get that Pond's cold cream, but I grow that for her because it reminds me so much of my youth as Wynn. And that's my little doggie. That's Honey. I was taking pictures and I went to focus my camera and there she was, nose to nose with my lens. She is my gardening partner. She does everything with me. Stainless steel, another one of Tom's roses. You love it or you hate it. It's usually the way it is, but it smells good. Oklahoma. Oklahoma is one of Ollie Weeks' roses, and his wife, whom right now I'm drawing a blank on her name, she was the one from Oklahoma and named this rose. And she came to our district, the South Central District in Texas, and what she did was set up the Oklahoma Challenge. So we award this beautiful silver rose that from Tiffany, that Mrs. Weeks, I'm going to have to call her Mrs. Weeks, can't remember her first name right now. I'll remember at 3 a.m., you know. That she both designed and had commissioned and made. So every year this is our coveted trophy, the Oklahoma Challenge. I have tried to win it 7 years in a row, have yet to do it, still working on it. Mirandy, sister to Oklahoma, and there's Mirandy, smells wonderful. Again, my friend's yard with no roses. Dolly Parton, of course you know that old joke about Dolly Parton, right? Why did she have such a small waist? Nothing ever grows in the shade, right? All right, and one of the ones that people actually grow in Texas is Dr. Huey. Do not ask me why they like Dr. Huey, they do. But every year I get a photo like this or similar to this from someone saying, how come my yellow rose turned red? This is the one I got this year. All right, and there it is growing in somebody's yard because they just love the blooms. All right, and that's it. And she's so done, you can stick her with a fork. Okay, I know you could ask questions as you went along, but there may be some that you still have. Feel free to fire away.
The university research garden,
Yes,
has that been adversely affected by rose?
it's gone. The one in my area is gone. They're no longer growing roses in my area because of the rose rosette. They're doing, no, not the one in Tyler, the one in Plano. We had one in Plano right on Coit Road, if you're familiar with Plano.
What in Tyler doing?
There is one in Tyler, and there's also one down in Aggie Land as well. And I think there's even one in Baylor, too. Oh, yeah. They're all working on it. They're all working with for some kind of resolution for rose rosette because it is a scourge. It is an absolute scourge. And I am delighted that you do not have rose rosette here yet. You will.
So has it traveled out of Texas?
Absolutely. I serve on the American Rose Center Committee. And Dr. Owens, who is, he's from LSU, he made the bald-faced statement, we do not have rose rosette in our area. And of course, a little bit of my husband's training here. I said, are you sure about that? Well, he stopped him dead. And 3 weeks later, he did a survey. They have rose rosette in Louisiana. So it's continuing to move throughout the states. Yes, sir.
So what is the risk for us to order roses from that area of the country?
You have risk. There is no question about that. If you order roses from the east, from outside of California, you have risk. And if people have gotten budwood from outside of areas that do not have rose rosette, you have risk. It's as simple as that. In fact, it is said, and I will not name names or point fingers, but it is said that rose rosette really got spread through much of the United States through the knockout rose from a nursery that spread an infected stock that shipped it. And there's quite a bit. What else can I answer for you?
What rootstock do you use?
My favorite rootstock is Fortuniana. We think it grows best in our clay soil. We will also use Dr. Huey if we can't get it on Fortuniana or graft our own. But we really prefer Fortuniana rootstock. You all use Fortuniana?
Mostly Dr. Huey.
Mostly Dr. Huey. Dr. Huey is very good. But our Texas soil is very hard when it's dry. I mean, there is no question about that. And once it gets dry, it's hard to get it wet again. I mean, it really is a challenge. And I know one person who dug out all of the soil in their beds, went right to the substratum, which for us is caliche, a limestone, and our soil is not that deep, dug it all out and put in a nice soil mix, very friable, etc. Did a really nice job. And then what happened was she really created a bathtub effect in the soil. So that didn't work out for her either. So there's no drainage. So we put like 4 to 6 inches of shredded hardwood mulch in our garden. So we use shredded hardwood mulch because of the rains. It kind of locks together and doesn't float away. And as that breaks down, it does enrich our soil. But our soils will never be wonderful. My soil is an old cotton farm. And most of the nutrients are gone in the soil. And it is highly alkaline in our area. Our water is 8.1. Yes?
Do you replant the area where you've taken a rosette?
I am replanting. I am not giving up. The only circumstance I have said that I am giving up roses is if Japanese beetles come to Texas. I grew roses in New York when Japanese beetles were prevalent there. As you know, it got its start in Linden, New Jersey back in the 50s. And I just don't want to be bothered. Now, they have not crossed the Red River into Texas. There is some thought that it's just too hot in Texas for Japanese beetles. Do you have Japanese beetles? No. Good. That's another reason I would want to come to California. Yes?
Why do you stay in Texas with all those challenges?
Why do I stay in Texas with all those challenges? Well, that's a very good question. And here's the answer. 30 years ago, I tried to move to California. So 30 years ago, I was a young woman, 32 2 years old. And I came out here with my husband. We had jobs out here. We were ready to go. And I said to my husband, well, let's go to this club. Let's do this. Let's do that. So we did all these things. And my husband at the end of it said, A, I don't like the traffic. I understand. Okay, you got me there, dear. 2, my husband grown up all over the South. 2, I do not know why this lovely Southern gentleman married me. I have no clue. In any case, he said to me, I'm not living anywhere where I can't tell the boys from the girls. So we stayed in Texas. Now that was 30 years ago. So we raised our children in Texas, and Texas is truly a wonderful place to raise children. My daughter loves Dallas. She's elected to stay. My husband is not leaving my daughter. So my choice is come by myself or stay with my family. It's not a hard choice to make. Any other questions? And I'll wrap this up and get ready for our next person. Good. Well, then thank you all very much. I truly appreciate it. I honestly didn't think anyone would come in here about talking about roses in Texas. And Marianne, as a native Dallasite and Texan here, how did I do?
Oh, you did great.
There we go. Okay, I've got the approval. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you all.